Today's daf yomi is Gittin daf lamed gimel, Gittin 33a. We're going to start on the bottom of lamed beis. Lamed beis, 5 lines to the bottom. The Gemara said in our Mishnah that at first, if you could appoint an agent to bring your wife a get, but then if you decided that you didn't want to divorce her, then you could just go to a court and nullify the get, even not in front of the presence of the agent. You could just nullify the get, even though the agent wasn't there. But then they said you can't do that anymore on account of tikkun olam. We wanted to make it a better world. We did a reform. So the Gemara says, okay, initially speaking, when you were able to do that, okay, you said you could go to court and nullify it. In front of how many people did you have to go to nullify it? So there's a dispute between Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshes. Rav Nachman was the Av Bezdin, actually. So Rav Nachman said b'fnei shnayim. Rav Nachman said you need to nullify in front of two. Rav Sheshes says b'fnei gimel. Rav Nachman said you can nullify it even in front of two. Rav Sheshes says it needs to be in front of three. Rav Sheshes amar b'fnei gimel. Rav Sheshes said you can nullify. Yeah.
So how does that work if Rav Nachman's opinion was two? Did he hold that in all the courts that he was the basin of?
That was his position. Yeah, that was Rav Nachman's position. Rav Nachman's position was two. So Rav Sheshes said in front of three. Rav Nachman said in front of two. Rav Nachman amar b'fnei beis l'bei trei nami bezdin karlu. Rav Nachman said you could nullify it even in front of two because he says two people is also called a bezdin. Two people is called a bezdin, and so how do we know that? So Amar Rav Nachman. So they said, how does Rav Nachman know that two people is also called a bezdin? So he gives from the Mishnah from Shvius, which talks about a pruz bowl. Pruz bowl is the ability to nullify. So the Torah says that all the loans that you give out over the 7 years of the 7-year cycle are nullified at the beginning of the 8th year. And so then Hillel the elder saw that people, because it says, well, you ghost, you're not allowed to press upon the person to collect the loan. But then Hillel the elder saw nobody was collecting money. So he instituted a pruz bowl, which allows you to still collect your money. And how does the pruz bowl work? You give over, so to speak, your contracts, your notes to the court, and the court is the one who, technically speaking, collects it for you. So it says in this Mishnah about handing over your documents to the court, it says in Mosrani lefnechem ploni uploni adayanin shebemakom ploni. It says I give it over to you, Judge so and so and Judge so and so in the place so and so. But how many judges are listed there in this discussion of the court? Two. So we see from here that two people is also sometimes called a court, and so therefore you just can nullify it in front of two. For Rav Sheshes, it says, no, just because it just lists two judges there, you think that Tana is like a spice merchant, that he goes ahead and lists every single time, has to go ahead and list every single judge. He says, Judge so-and-so and so-and-so, he doesn't bother to write it, but it also includes a third judge. So again, Rav Nachman's trying to prove that it's in front of two judges. You can nullify it. Rav Nachman, how do I know that you can even nullify this agent in front of two? It says in that Mishnah in Shvius, we're on top of 33a, it says that the judges can sign below or the witnesses. The judges sign below or the witnesses. So what does this mean? My life, doesn't it mean Dayanim Dumya De'edim, that judges similar to witnesses? Ma Edim Shanayim, just like witnesses are two. Av Dayanim Namishnayim, also judges are two. And so therefore we see from here that the judges could be two. Whereas Rav Sheshes says, Midei Irya, Hakadisa, Hakadisa. Rav Sheshes says, that's not true. That's not necessarily the case. It means if they're judges, they would sign as three. And if they're witnesses, they'd sign as two. The Gemara says, well, if that's the case, according to Rav Sheshes, why would it need to list Dayanim and Edim? Why would it need to list both? Well, I'm a Lila Mr. Dayanim, I'm a Lila Mr. Edim. The Gemara explains, Kamash Malon, Deloshna Kasav Blashan Dayanim, Achasmi Edim, Deloshna Kasav Blashan Edim, Achasmi Edim. It's to tell us we don't really care. We're not going to be so strict if the contract is written as judges and then witnesses sign, or it's written as witnesses and then judges sign. We're going to be flexible there. We really just need two people to sign below. We don't care if they call them as judges or witnesses, and we don't care what the contract says exactly referring to them. There's a very, very lenient form of contract and judicial proceeding. You don't really even need you don't even need judges according to Rav Nachman. It could be two, and they would be called judges. That's fine. So then Rabbi Gamliel nullified this. I mean, they tikkun olam. He nullified this ability to just go and if the husband sends out an agent to divorce the wife, the Rabbi Gamliel said that the original law was that the husband could then nullify the agent in front of a court while the agent is already on their way to divorce the wife. Rabbi Gamliel nullified that on account of tikkun olam, fixing the world. My mimnei tikkun olam. You had a question, Aaron? So what does this mean on account of tikkun olam? Rabbi Yochanan says mimnei takanas mamzerim, because otherwise it would create mamzerim. What's the mamzerim? Because husband, let's say call him Ruvain, sends out the agent. He appoints his lawyer. He goes, okay, I'm going to go to my attorney. Let's say his attorney. I don't know who's the attorney general these days. I don't even know who's the attorney general. But Merrick Garland. He goes to Merrick Garland. You're my power of attorney. I appoint you to bring a get to my wife. And so Merrick Garland's on his way. Gets on the boat. The boat's a 3-week journey. Meanwhile, as he's on his way, the husband's like, you know what? I changed my mind. I'm going to go to my local court and just cancel that agency. But meanwhile, Garland doesn't know this. Garland shows up in Jerusalem and gives the wife the get. The wife's like, I've been waiting for this my whole life. Now I'm free. She goes that same day, gets remarried. She gets pregnant. But she thinks she's divorced, but she's not divorced because the husband nullified the get. So therefore, that child is a mamzer because the child is born from a woman who's married to another man. So Rabbi Gamliel stopped that. He says, he said the only way you can nullify it is either by going straight to her or in front of the agent. Rabbi Yochanan gave a different theory why Rabbi Gamliel did this, not because of takanas mamzerim. That was Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Shlokish gave a different theory, takanas agunos. He says because the other issue is that if it's so easy to do this, he could just keep harassing her. If it's so, let's require him to go after the woman herself. You had a question, Max? Then he says because otherwise it's too much of harassment, and the woman will end up basically be so easily not divorced, and then he'll cancel it, and then she'll have really a hard time. She'll remain married to him, and it's just a way of harassing her. So Rabbi Yochanan, who says that the whole concern is mamzerim, Rabbi Yochanan Amar B'nei Takanas Mamzerim, Sarvel Rav Nachman Damar B'fnei Shnayim. He must be consistent with the position of Rav Nachman, who says that even in front of two is considered a court. Why? Because since it's in front of two, Beitrei Leislu Kala, two people, when they're a court, nobody knows about it. They don't have the full offices. They don't have, it's not like when you issue a Supreme Court ruling, everybody knows about it. It's on the Twitter in 12 seconds, and everybody's following it with the blogs. But a private court with two people, nobody knows what's going on, so they won't know that it's nullified. Divu Shema, she won't have heard. Yada. She won't know about Avazol Mitzvah. Vika Mamzerim. So, and then there'll be Mamzerim. So therefore he says he got rid of it. But by the way, so that's the question. So why doesn't he just make the takana in front of three? Why doesn't Rabbi Gamliel's takana say you have to nullify in front of three and not two? So Tosfos asks that question and says no, because he also says a little bit of Reish Lakish's takana sagunos, but he really says both. But,
shouldn't you have taught three and then you would have learned two?
Who's going to teach three? Oh no, you wouldn't have learned three. He says the real reason is two.
Three would have been two.
Right.
And obviously.
No, there's two separate reasons. One is that it's too secretive, and then there's another reason, which is a smaller reason, but that's Takanos Agunos, that it's too much of harassing her. But his main reason was because of Mamzera. So that's what Tosfos' answer is. So the Gemara says, Reish Lakish says that what's the concern with the Takanos Agunos? He says the concern is that it's going to be like Agunos, because several Rav Sheshes, he holds like Rav Sheshes, the Amar B'fnei Gimel, and he says that you have to do it in front of three. But plus the Islu Kala, and when it's three people, everybody will hear about it. V'shama v'yada, she'll know. Well, mitzvah, she won't get married. The Takanos Agunos u'deika, and so therefore she'll need to she's going to be harassed. She's going to have to go back after her husband, or she'll have to send an agent. And he's not going to do anything. He's just a nice way of torturing this woman. So that's why Rav Sheshes, Reish Lakish is consistent with Rav Sheshes' position. So now we have another question. We leave this aside. Don't forget about this dispute we just had. We've already had two disputes. One is initially in front of how many? In front of two. That's Rav Nachman. In front of three. That's Rav Sheshes. What's the reason? Rabbi Yochanan says because of Agunos. Rich Lakish says because of Mamzerim. Now we have another question. Let's say Rabbi Yochanan says because of Agunos. Rich Lakish says because. All right. Rabbi Yochanan says because of Mamzerim. Rich Lakish says because of Agunos. Yes, Isaac.
It could be any like nafkamina if you hold on there versus Agunos, or is it just like a preference?
So the Gemara is going to get into that. Look at it now. So it says the Gemara, Tan Rabbanan, Baton Mavutal. Gemara says, Divrei Rebbe. So Gemara has another dispute here. Gemara says, let's say he went ahead and did it anyway. So the husband's not allowed to go. He sends off Merrick Garland to be the power of attorney to bring the bring the get. Now he's not allowed to go to his private court and nullify it. But let's say he does it anyway. He does it anyway. He says, I don't care. Now he's overridden. Is it a valid act? What? What do you mean the kids and moms are?
When he's overriding the court.
So that's the question. If he goes ahead and cancels it, even though the Rabbi Gamliel made it the Kana, he's not allowed to. Let's say he goes ahead and cancels it. Is the get technically canceled? In which case, if the wife did remarry the offspring is a mamzer, or no, he can't do it. And so then if the wife remarried, the offspring is not a mamzer. So what's the status of his nullification? The Gemara says, Rabbi says, if he went ahead and did it, guess what? It works. It's effective. So if he did that, then this child will be a mamzer, even though he's not supposed to. If he did it, it's a mamzer. Whereas Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, he's the son of Rabbi Gamliel, so he's really holding by his father. He says, he says no, he can't do it. He can't if he tries to nullify it, it's not effective. And if there was any stipulation in the document, he can't suddenly change it before a court, not in front of her, in front of the agent. Shem Kain, because if that's the case, what power does the Bezin have? If you're going to say, even though Rabbi Gamliel made it takana that you can't annul this decision, then he can still go ahead and do it, and it's effective. You just basically negated the whole power of Rabbi Gamliel's takana. So he says, by the way, it's ironic his phrase, Makoch Bezin Yafeh means not what power does it mean when you go to this court and nullify. It means what's the power of Rabbi Gamliel's takana? If you do it, then Rabbi Gamliel's takana is ineffective anyway. But hold on, Isaac and then Ben.
And then there's like directly from that second opinion. If that husband, let's say he thinks he avoided the death, right? Remember he didn't do it properly in front of an agent, like when he remarries after kids, that kind of
The husband, so Isaac is asking, well, what if the husband thinks the get was nullified and he remarries the kid a mamzer? The husband's always, biblically speaking, the husband, if he marries more than one woman, he doesn't create a mamzer because he's technically speaking not prohibited to. Today we don't allow it, but and he even told me that he grew up in Morocco, and he told me that in Morocco he remembers growing up a man who had more than one wife. So he remembered that, he said. So even in the Sephardic communities, within the last 100 years, they were still marrying more than one woman. Yeah.
Can't you say this with any single big sort of?
No, because this is the takana that the court made. So we want to know if this takana is this is the proper way to act, or it's the force of law. That's the question. Is it the force of law at that point?
It could be the force of law, but then if you do it, it also wouldn't be necessarily.
Well, that's the question. That's exactly the question that we're asking. Is it the force of law, but ex post facto it's valid? Or do we say, no, this is the law. This is the law. Yeah, Jeff.
Yesterday, the day before, we done a question of whether you could avoid a get or whether all you could do is cancel the agency.
So does this relate to the question of are you voiding the get or are you just voiding the agency? I don't know. That's a very good, that's okay. Now you guys are coming deep. Now you're coming deep. So Gemara says, okay, so the Gemara asked the question, do you really want to say that that biblically speaking, he can nullify this get? Biblically speaking, he has the authority to nullify the agent. Because you want to give that. Rabbi Gamliel made this takana, and we want to say we need to uphold the power of the court. Sharina and Ashes Ishla Alma. So biblically speaking, he's nullified it. And meaning she's still married to him. But now you want to strengthen the power of the court. So you want to say, no, he can't do it. And she's divorced. So biblically speaking, she's still married. And now the rabbis are still allowing her to remarry. Is that what you're going to say? Is that what you're saying, that you're overriding a biblical law? The biblical law is that she's still married to the husband. And now you want to have the chutzpah to say, whoa, we have to support Rabbi Gamliel in his takana and say she's no longer married. Yes, Isaac.
I think I remember last year, we did something where it's like, because the rabbis are the ones that do the marriages anyways.
So keep on where it says exactly what we're going to say, and the Gemara cites Kesuvos Daf Gimel, which we did last year when we studied together, Isaac. So it's right here. Gemara is citing a Gemara from Kesuvos Daf Gimel. You see, Isaac is holding. He's holding. So he says as follows: in called the Mekadesh, the Ata the Rabbana Mekadesh. Anybody who gets married with the consent or the knowledge of the rabbis. This is the sugya of the rabbis have the ability to uproot the kedushin. The rabbis are uprooting the kedushin and saying she's no longer married. So what does it mean? So that basically the rabbis have the right to say that she was never married. How so? Maybe it could be like a stipulation. The rabbis say it's conditional. Now, when you get married, you're getting married on this condition. Well, if that's the case, a lot of people point out that's deeply problematic, because then how can you ever have a question of a mamzer? You could always say, well, they were never married. We conditionally, retroactively uproot it. And people try to use this. People have tried to say, oh, we can solve the Aguna crisis in America today or in the world today by saying everybody's getting married on the basis of the rabbis, and then you're never really married. So you could have a couple that's been married for 50 years, and then you say, oh, you were never married to begin with. So what? It doesn't make it a mamzer. If you just have kids and you're not married, that doesn't make a mamzer. What makes a mamzer is if you have kids while the woman is married to somebody else. But the problem is, so that's what people want to say, it's all conditional. And you say the whole marriage is conditional. So there are different theories as to how this works and how it doesn't work. And obviously, it's not the Daf Yomi. We're not going to go to the full thing here, but I just wanted people to be aware of that. Yeah. So another theory is that the rabbis say, well, did I cut you off, Judah?
No, that's what I was going to say before about that, especially if you explicitly say it's conditional.
Halachic prenup does not say it's conditional. That's not how the halachic prenuptial agreement works. The halachic prenuptial agreement specifically does not work this way, and that's one of the criticisms of the halachic prenuptial agreement. There's a lot of criticisms that are coming from different directions, but it's not as effective as this. Halachic prenuptial agreement does not always work, and the reason why it doesn't always work is because, first of all, it just obligates the husband to pay, let's say, $30,000 to $40,000 a year, which is, while it sounds like a lot of money, if a person is spending millions of dollars in divorce litigation, and it's not that much money. And also, he probably doesn't think that he'll get it back as part of an ultimate settlement, whatever. So the halachic prenuptial agreement that was instituted by the Rabbinical Council of America, all that states, not all that states, but that states is that the husband will pay her support, while if he's summoned to a court and he doesn't show up at the bet din. It doesn't say we're going to cancel the marriage retroactively. So therefore it's not. It doesn't employ this tool, which people who are Aguna advocates say that this is what it should be using. So anyway, Amalei Ravino Rav Ashi. So Amar's assumption is that the way the rabbis are uprooting the kedushin is because they're saying that through the concept of hefker, bez, and hefker, that we have the right to control the money, and we're saying that he didn't even give her any money to begin with. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, Teinach the kiddush b'kaspa, that makes sense if he betrothed her with money. But if he was mekadesh or babiyah, if they had marital relations, what are they going to do? Ma'iko meimer. So the Gemara says, Shavi Rabbana will be lost, will be lost. The rabbis say, no, that relation is just like basically sexual intercourse with the purpose of marriage. Even though we said earlier, we had a Gemara earlier in Gittin where he says when they have the biyah, the assumption is that they're doing it for the purpose of marriage. So here the rabbis are saying the rabbis have the ability to say it was for purpose of promiscuous purposes, not for the purpose of marriage.
Also retroactively change the status of biyah.
That's what they're saying. That's exactly what they're saying, that they're So that's what they're saying. Shavi Rabbana will be lost nus. Look at Rashi. The afku shem kedushimina. They're uprooting the kedushin. So, and they have the ability to do this. Shari kishakidish amina chok datam kiddush. When he betrothed her, he did it according to the laws of the rabbis. Kachani mefarish b'kol makom milibi. That's how I did it. That's how I explain it. Umi rabosai kibalti, from my rabbis, I explained, called the Mekadesh, adat the Rabbana Mekadesh, the Kiddush Kesef Rabbana, because he introduced a new idea that that betrothal with money is just rabbinic, because that's not explicit in the Torah. So then he goes into discussion of that. Well, I'll read the Rashi. He says, because the Loksib Eja El Gamrin Kicha Kicha Misteyafram. We learn out from Steyafram, Kicha Kicha. Behind the Kaparach Tanach. So meaning to say that makes sense because it's not explicit. We just learned it out from Xer Shav. It wasn't rabbinical. It's like a smachta. That makes sense if you were Mekadesh with money, but Kiddush would be a Dachsib Eja Ki Yikach Ish Isha Uvala Ma'ikol Meimar Hech Yakul Lakor Davar Minator. How could they approve it if it's Bia? Meshani Shavir Rabbanon Bilas Bilas Nus shall call Mekadesh Bia, and they say, okay, the rabbis turned it into promiscuous intercourse. Because the Amar Hasam Rav Mangin Amanda Mekadesh Bia Mishum Pritzusa. Rav used to lash somebody with Mekadesh on Bia because he says it was lewd. B'tshuvas Kashos Yesh B'Davar. He says there's a lot of problems with this. Chazik Zer Shava Gufatori. So he asks Eli's question. Rashi asks Eli's question. The birthday boy's question. He says Zer Shava is biblical. And secondly, Shari Lo, I'm doing this going out of Xer Shava. We sometimes stone people from Xer Shava. And furthermore, okay, he says, he gives a few examples. And furthermore, Kamashani, Shavi Rabban Bilas Bilas Nus, Hechin Matil Shavi Bilas Nus. So the Araisi, how can we make something Bilas Nus? It's biblical. So the Gemara is B'chiyamrina Rav Maganos in the Kadosh Bia Kiddushin Miyalobasui. Rav used to lash him, but it was still Kiddushin. Elahava Hadi Araisa. So Rav says, I think both are biblical. Hadi Isper Rabban and Koach Avadam Neisha B'Shas Kiddushin Torah B'Datam L'Kadesh Kedash and Igor Chacham Yisrael. So Rashi introduced a new idea. The reason why they could do it, why the rabbis can nullify it, is because they say when the husband was Mekadisher, he says, I'm going to do it according to the consent of the rabbis. And the rabbis are saying, we're uprooting the Kedusha because you did it, everything conditional upon our consent. Tosfos asked a fundamental question. Then we have a problem. Remember, we said earlier in our Gemara, you're going to be Shami Achapel Bas Achoso, that maybe he'll have mercy and on his niece and he won't kill her. So if that's the case, every come along. So it says, okay, that it's not such a common case. Yeah, Baruch Yosef, you had a question?
A Gezer Shava comes from the rabbis, though. Like it's biblical, but it comes from the rabbis, right?
Well, so Rashi says specifically here, Gzeir Shava is a biblical law. Gzeir Shava is considered a dioraita. It's a biblical law. Seems like his like there's sometimes where the Gemara cites verses and then they call it a smachta, but Rashi, which means it's not biblical. But Rashi says here, Gzeir Shava is a biblical law. Amira, what do you mean? Do you say anything? Yeah, I assume. Well, there needs to be consent on her part to accept. But yeah, I assume so. I don't know. We have to ask. I don't know. I have to check the race. It has to be awareness. What's the assumption? I don't know. We have to ask for that. What? It was 2 days ago. We missed it. So now. He says to 10 people, write this get for my wife. He can nullify some of them, not in front of the others. So he says to 10 people, you go write this get for my wife. He's able to let's say cancel 2 of them. You don't write it, and that's not a violation of Rabbi Gamliel's decree because there's still 8 people who can still write it. Whereas Rashbag says any Rashbag says you can only nullify any of the 10 when they're all in front of each other. But what's the nature of the argument? Their arguing is if you have a whole group of witnesses and you cancel some of them, you automatically cancel all of them. Rabbi who says that you can only cancel them if they're all together. so Rebbe who says, when Rebbe says you can cancel them, you cancel even some of them. He says, Eidish Shabbat Mitzasa, Shabbat Kul. He says, just because you canceled some of them, the others are still there. And if these others who are remaining want to give the get, they can. We're on top of 33b. Rashbag says no. Once you cancel some, you've canceled all of them. These people will not know that they were canceled. And they'll go write her a get and they'll give it to her, think it's a get. But since they're all canceled, because some of them were canceled, so then she's a married woman, but she'll think she's permitted. Alternatively, even Rashbag says they're not all canceled. Just because you cancel one or two of them, they're not all canceled. Why does Rashbag say you can't do it? Because he says, he's in a position that if there was something that was done in front of 10 people, you need to do it in front of 10 in order to cancel it. So the Gemara says, let's say he says, all of you need to sign on the get. What would be the law there? Would we say, what would be the case in this case? Would Rabbi Shimon and Gamliel agree that you can cancel some of them, not in front of the others? Because if you say we need all of you, then for sure they can't do it unless they're all there. So then there's no problem. Would we say time of the Rashbag Mishum the Kasavar Edish Shabbat Mitzasa Kula? Because once you cancel some of them, you've canceled all of them. And since it says all of you, then they can't all write it and give it. And so therefore they won't do it. Or do we say anything that was done in front of 10, you need 10 people to cancel it. And so therefore, even if he says kulchem, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel would say the witnesses are not canceled. And so therefore it wouldn't work. So Tashma, how do we give an answer to this? So he says, the two people give a get to my wife. So Rebbe says he could cancel one without the other. So there, in the case of two, you clearly need two witnesses. Whereas Rashbag says, and two is like, it's like he says, I need all of you. And still Rashbag says, pliki. So we see from here that Rashbag would say it even in the case of kulchem. So Amar Ravashi says, no. If this price is referring to witnesses, hachinami. If this is referring to witnesses for the writing, that would be okay. But here, what we're talking about, we're talking about witnesses to carry it. And you don't need both witnesses to carry it. And hachinami mistaber. Indeed, this is logical because Tani Seifa Amar Zebef Neatzmo says to each witness on their own. And then he can cancel one without the other. Now, if you say it's referring to witnesses who carrying it, makes sense. It's referring to writing it. If you commanded these witnesses on the writing, one not in front of the other, would they be able to combine to be two witnesses? Didn't we have a teaching? You need to have the two witnesses see it together in order for them to be two witnesses on the topic. Like Mar says, no, that's not necessarily the case. Still, Rabbi Shub and Karcha sphere away. Now, maybe you all like the position of Rabbi Shub and Karcha. By the way, that's the son. Ben Karcha is the Rabbi Akiva. So it's like Rabbi Shub, son of Rabbi Akiva, who says two witnesses don't need to see an action together. One could be in the morning, one could be at night. So it says Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yehuda, how do we paskin? He says Shmas Minei de Rabbi Abba Tarti. He says I heard from Rabbi Abba. He paskined in like two things. He says Chadaka Rabbi. I heard he paskined in one area. Like there's two disputes between Rabbi and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. One is if you went and nullified the takana, is it effective? Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says it's not. Rabbi says it is. And then the second question is, are you able to cancel some of the agents or not? Rabbi says you are, and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says you're not. So he says here, Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yehuda says, I heard from Rabbi Abba two things, one like Rabbi and one like Rashbag. I didn't know which one was like, I didn't know in which case he ruled like Rabbi, which case he ruled like Rashbag. Amar Rav Yosef Nechsei Anan, he says, let's analyze it. Kiyatzer Rav Dimi, Amar Maisa, Rav Dimi said that there was an incident that so that there was an incident, and so what kind of incident was there? So he said the incident was, look at the Rashi, Ma'isa v'asa. This is the Ksuvos in Parak. It says this case in Ksuvos. Remember it, Isaac? In Parak Almana Nizones. Remember that case in Ksuvos at the very end of Ksuvos, Tafkuf, remember it? We did it together. So he said there was an incident in the court where they evaluated the assets of a person and they sold him to collect his debts that he owed. And so the Chachamim Rabbi Shimon, we argue, the Chachamim say there that the sale was nullified, and the Rabban Rashbag said that the sale was good because otherwise Makoch Bezin Yafa. And Rabbi passed in the position of the Chachamim that the sale was not valid because they undervalued or overvalued the process. So we see from here that he doesn't hold like this position of Makoch Bezin Yafa. Amar Fun of Rabbi Prata, Benosh Rabbi Elazar ben Prata, Ben Benosh Rabbi Prata Agado, Imkein Makoch Bezin Yafa. He canceled it. If that's the case, Makoch Bezin Yafa. The Chazer Rebbe Ba'asik Rashbag, and Rebbe reversed himself there and ruled like Rashbag. So for the fact that Rebbe, in the case of the power of the court, rules like Rashbag, we see from here Midahak Rashbag, Hach Rebbe. That in the other case, in the case of can you nullify some of the people of the witnesses and not in front of the others, he rules like Rebbe that you because he rules like Rebbe that you can. So hold on one second. What did Rebbe say that? What did Rebbe say there? That you can do that. Yachol Batal Zeshel B'Smezeh. After Rabbi Yoshia de Menusha Savar Chada Karebbe v'Chada Karashbag. Also Rabbi Yoshia Menusha holds like Rebbe and Rashbag. One like Rebbe, one like Rashbag. Amar Abchana Chamisha Sabe Havyon. There are 5 elders. Kamei Rabbi Yoshia de Menusha. They were standing in front of Rabbi Yoshia Menusha. Also Gavra Kamei. A guy came in front of him and they forced him to give the get. We'll see why later in the tract how they could do it. Amrlan Zilu Itamu. So then Rabbi Yoshaya said to him, quickly go and hide. The Kisvua, right? And so he hid. So therefore, we don't want him to find the husband can't find you. He told the witnesses, quickly go and hide and write the get from his wife. Hold on one second, Ben. If you want to hold like Rabbi, if you hold like Rebbe that he could go and nullify in front of the court, it'll be nullified. What will good to hide? So in that case, he holds like Rashbag. And if you want to say in the second dispute, he holds like Rashbag that you can nullify part of them not in front of the others. Then Lamalui Tamure, why would he say to hide? You just say separate, and then Rashbag would say, that since they're separate, you can't nullify some in front of the others. In one dispute, he holds that you can cancel some of them, not in front of the others. He holds like Rabbi. In the other case, that Makoch Bezin Yafa, he holds like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel that it's not going to be nullified. So the Gemara will stop here, but Ben had a question. Yes, Ben.
Yeah, why using this case seems like it's